Take one more step toward my pup, and you'll answer to me. The Alpha King's voice froze the entire royal sanctuary. Every noble, every guard, and every caretaker stopped moving. But the small white wolf pup sitting in the center of the room did something no one expected. He lifted his head, looked past all of them, and walked straight toward the lowest-ranked Omega in the castle. Lydia Hartwell stood frozen beside the doorway, holding a basket of herbs against her chest. She had spent years learning how to disappear in rooms filled with powerful people. It was safer that way. Omegas like her were meant to serve, not stand beside kings. Especially not beside a pup that had terrified half the palace. Ash, the Alpha King's royal wolf pup, had refused every handler sent to care for him. The finest trainers in Blackthorn Pack had failed. Noble daughters who hoped to gain the Alpha King's attention had tried offering treats, toys, even expensive gifts. Ash had ignored all of them. Some said he was impossible. Others whispered that the pup carried too much of the old alpha blood and was dangerous to approach. Lydia had heard every rumor. She just never believed them. Because when she looked at Ash, she didn't see a creature everyone feared. She saw a lonely little wolf who had learned that fear was easier than trust. "You're not supposed to be here," a royal caretaker whispered behind her. Lydia glanced down at the pup sitting only a few feet away. "Neither is he," she quietly replied. The room went silent. At the far end of the sanctuary stood Ethan Blackwood, the Alpha King himself. Tall, composed, and impossible to read. His black coat carried the silver markings of the royal pack, and his expression was the same one that had made entire council meetings fall quiet. But Lydia noticed something others didn't. His hand tightened slightly when Ash moved closer to her. Not anger. Worry. "Ash," Ethan said firmly. The pup stopped. Everyone waited for Lydia to step away. She didn't. Instead, she slowly placed the basket on the floor and sat down several feet away from him. No sudden movements. No commands. No attempt to prove she was brave. "Everyone keeps telling you what you are," Lydia whispered. "Dangerous. Difficult. A problem." Ash's ears lowered slightly. Lydia smiled softly. "That sounds exhausting." For the first time in months, the royal wolf pup didn't growl. He simply watched her. Then Lydia began to sing. It was an old melody her mother used to hum while caring for injured animals back home. A simple song. Nothing magical. Nothing dramatic. Just a quiet promise that someone was there. The entire sanctuary held its breath. Ash slowly walked forward and rested beside her. A gasp moved through the room. Even Ethan looked surprised. Because Ash had never chosen anyone. Not a trainer. Not a noble. Not even members of the royal guard. But he had chosen her. And in that moment, something impossible happened. A faint warmth passed through the ancient bond between Alpha and Wolf. Ethan felt it. Lydia felt something she could not explain. The connection was small, but real. A secret the entire pack would soon notice. Ethan stepped forward, his voice quieter now. "What are you?" Lydia looked up at him. For the first time, she saw something behind the title, behind the crown, behind the perfect image of the Alpha King. She saw a man who was just as confused as everyone else. Lydia looked back at Ash sleeping peacefully beside her. "Someone who listened," she answered. But neither of them knew that this small moment would challenge the rules of the entire pack, uncover a hidden royal truth, and bring an unexpected Omega into the heart of the Alpha King's world. "You are the first person Ash has trusted in months," Ethan said quietly. "Do you understand what that means?" Lydia looked from the Alpha King to the small wolf pup sleeping beside her. The entire sanctuary had expected fear. They expected growling, panic, maybe another failed attempt to get close. Instead, they were watching the one Omega everyone overlooked sit calmly beside the royal wolf like it was the most natural thing in the world. Lydia slowly stood and brushed a few pieces of hay from her simple work dress. "It means he was tired of being treated like a problem," she answered. A few guards exchanged uncertain looks. Nobody spoke to the Alpha King that way, not even members of the royal council. Ethan studied her carefully. Most people changed their voices around him. They became softer, more careful. They chose every word like their lives depended on it. Lydia did the opposite. She spoke to him like he was simply a person standing in front of her. And somehow, that bothered him more than fear ever had. "You believe you understand my wolf better than the royal trainers?" Ethan asked. Lydia tilted her head slightly. "No, I believe I understand loneliness." The answer caught him off guard. For a moment, The powerful Alpha King of Blackthorn Pack had no response. Then Ash shifted closer to Lydia's feet, as if reminding everyone that the conversation was not finished. Ethan noticed the small movement. So did everyone else. The bond between an alpha and his wolf was private, but impossible to hide when it reacted in front of witnesses. The whispers started almost immediately. An Omega caretaker had done what royal experts could not. She had reached the creature connected to the future of the pack. By the next morning, the entire palace knew Lydia Hartwell's name. Unfortunately, not everyone was impressed. "This is a mistake," Lord Victor Hale said inside the council chamber. His voice was calm, but his expression carried years of judgment. An unknown Omega from a sanctuary should not have unrestricted access to the royal wolf. Ethan sat at the head of the table, listening without reacting. She helped Ash when no one else could. Victor folded his hands. Or she created a connection that should not exist. The room became quiet, because everyone understood what he meant. In Blackthorn Pack, the Alpha's wolf was not only an animal. It represented instinct, leadership, and the strength of the royal bloodline. If Ash trusted Lydia, then Lydia suddenly had influence nobody expected. Later that afternoon, Ethan found Lydia returning to the sanctuary with a small basket of herbs. "You should be careful," he said. She looked up. "Because of the council?" "Because people fear what they do not understand." Lydia smiled faintly. "That sounds familiar." Ethan almost smiled. Almost. It was such a small change that most people would have missed it. Lydia did not. "You are not afraid of me," Ethan said. It was not a question. Lydia looked at Ash, then back at him. "Should I be?" For the first time in years, Ethan had no answer. The next few days changed everything inside the palace. Ash followed Lydia everywhere. During morning inspections, the pup waited outside her workroom. During royal meetings, Ethan found himself distracted because his wolf kept pulling his attention toward the sanctuary. And the strangest part was that Ethan did not feel weaker. He felt calmer. But while Lydia and Ethan slowly began understanding each other, someone inside the palace was watching. Someone who knew the old secrets of the royal bloodline. Someone who believed a forgotten truth about Ash could destroy everything Ethan had built. And soon, the pack would learn that the little wolf pup was never just a royal companion. He was the key to a secret hidden beneath the crown. "You need to leave the royal sanctuary before this becomes a bigger problem." Ethan's words were calm, but Lydia could hear the weight behind them. She looked at him while Ash rested peacefully beside her, completely unaware that the entire palace was arguing about his choice. "You are asking me to leave because I did something wrong?" Lydia asked. Ethan looked away for a moment. "No, then why?" The Alpha King was silent. Because the truth was more complicated than any order he could give. He did not want Lydia gone. That was the problem. Since the day she sat beside Ash without fear, something inside him had changed. The bond between him and his wolf felt different. The constant tension he carried as a leader had become quieter. For the first time in years, Ethan did not feel like he was standing alone behind a crown. But wanting something and allowing himself to have it were two very different things. "Because the council is watching you," he finally said. Lydia crossed her arms. "The council was watching me before I ever walked into this room." Ethan almost smiled at the honesty. "Almost. You do not understand how dangerous attention can be in this palace. Maybe I understand more than you think." Her voice softened. "Everyone here looks at Ash and sees power. They see a symbol, a bloodline, a future king's weapon." She looked down at the pup. "I see a scared little wolf who just wants someone to sit beside him." Ethan had heard many people speak about leadership. Advisors, generals, council members. Everyone had advice about ruling a pack. But Lydia was the first person who reminded him that leadership was not only about strength. It was about understanding what others needed. That evening, Ethan returned to the council chamber. The room was filled with old traditions and older opinions. Lord Victor Hale stood near the window, watching the snow-covered mountains beyond the palace walls. "The Omega is becoming too important," Victor said. "The pack notices everything." Ethan remained standing. "The pack notices that Ash is calmer." Victor turned. "Or they notice that their Alpha King is allowing an outsider too close." The words were carefully chosen. Not an accusation. Not yet. A warning. Ethan knew the rules of pack politics. A leader could not ignore every concern simply because he disliked hearing it. But something about Victor's argument bothered him. It was not about Ash. It was about control. Later that night, Lydia discovered something strange inside Ash's old sleeping area. Hidden beneath a blanket was a small silver pendant. It was not a toy. It was a royal symbol she had seen only in ancient records from the sanctuary archives. When she touched it, Ash immediately reacted. His ears lifted. His eyes changed from playful curiosity to recognition. "You know this, don't you?" Lydia whispered. Ash stepped closer. The moment her fingers touched the pendant again, a sudden feeling passed through her. Not a clear memory. More like pieces of a story waiting to be uncovered. A promise. A hidden room. A voice telling someone to protect the future of the pack. Lydia quickly pulled her hand away. She knew enough to understand one thing. Ash was carrying a secret. The next morning, she brought the pendant to Ethan. The moment he saw it, his expression changed. Not anger. Not surprise. Something deeper. Something like fear. "Where did you find this?" he asked. Lydia studied him carefully. Why does a small pendant scare the Alpha King? Ethan closed his hand around the symbol. For the first time, the strongest man in Blackthorn Pack looked uncertain. Because that pendant belonged to someone who was supposed to be forgotten. And across the palace, hidden behind years of silence and royal tradition, an old secret began to wake again. That symbol should not exist anymore. Ethan's voice was quieter than usual, but Lydia noticed the way his fingers tightened around the silver pendant. The Alpha King was not looking at the object like a piece of history. He was looking at something that had returned from a past he had spent years trying to bury. Ash stood between them, watching Ethan carefully. The little wolf pup was usually playful around Lydia, but now even he seemed to understand that something important had changed. "Tell me the truth," Lydia said. "What is that pendant?" Ethan looked toward the window of the royal study. Outside, the lights of Blackthorn Palace reflected against the snowy mountains, a place that looked peaceful from far away but carried generations of secrets inside its walls. "It belonged to the previous royal bloodline," Ethan finally answered. "Before my family took the throne." Lydia stayed silent. She knew enough about pack history to understand what that meant. The Alpha King position was not only inherited through strength. It was protected by traditions, alliances, and promises made long before either of them were born. "So Ash is connected to the old royal family," Lydia said. Ethan nodded slowly. "Yes, and that is why I cannot let anyone know what he truly carries." Lydia looked at Ash. The pup tilted his head, almost offended that they were discussing him without permission. For a moment, the seriousness disappeared. Lydia smiled. "He does realize we are talking about him, right?" Ethan glanced at the pup. "Unfortunately, he usually does." Ash walked over and sat directly on Ethan's boots. The Alpha King looked down at him. "You know you are not helping your reputation." Lydia laughed softly. It was a small sound, but Ethan noticed it immediately. He could not remember the last time someone laughed in his presence without fear or hesitation. That moment stayed with him longer than he expected. But the peaceful feeling did not last. By the next morning, rumors spread throughout the palace. The council had learned that Lydia discovered something connected to the old royal line. Lord Victor Hale moved quickly. He called for a formal review of Ash's condition and questioned why an Omega caretaker had access to information reserved for royal historians. Lydia stood outside the council chamber and heard every word. "She is not trained in royal matters," Victor said. "She is letting emotion guide decisions that should be based on tradition." Ethan entered the room before Lydia could hear more. The atmosphere changed instantly. Every member of the council lowered their gaze. "You are questioning my decision?" Ethan asked. Victor remained calm. "I am questioning whether personal feelings are affecting your judgment." The room became completely silent. Lydia felt the words before Ethan responded. Not because she believed them, but because she knew they were designed to hurt. Ethan looked at Victor. "You are mistaken if you believe kindness is weakness." For the first time, his voice carried something beyond authority. It carried conviction. After the meeting, Lydia found Ethan in the sanctuary with Ash. "You defended me," she said. Ethan looked at the pup instead of her. "I defended what was right." Lydia smiled slightly. "That sounded almost like you were trying to convince yourself." Ethan finally looked at her. For a second, the distance between them disappeared. Then Ash suddenly stood and walked toward an old stone wall inside the sanctuary. Lydia followed. The pup placed his paw against a hidden marking carved into the stone. A faint glow appeared beneath the dust. Ethan stepped closer, his expression changing completely. "That wall has been sealed for decades." Lydia looked at him. "Then why did Ash know how to open it?" Nobody answered. Because behind that hidden wall was a forgotten part of Blackthorn Pack history. A truth that could change who had the right to lead the pack. And as the ancient door slowly began to open, Ethan realized the secret he feared most was not about losing the throne. It was about discovering that the throne had never truly belonged to him alone. If this door opens, there may be no going back. Ethan's voice was low as he stood in front of the ancient stone wall beneath the royal sanctuary. The hidden passage had remained untouched for decades, protected by forgotten symbols and old pack traditions. But now, the small wolf pup who had been feared by everyone had revealed a secret that even the Alpha King himself did not know. Lydia stood beside Ethan, watching Ash place his paw against the glowing mark. He was waiting for the right person, Lydia whispered. Ethan looked at her. You mean the right Omega? She met his eyes. I mean the right person. For some reason, those words stayed with him. In Blackthorn Pack, everyone saw people through titles. Alpha, Omega, Royal, Servant, Leader, Outsider. But Lydia had never looked at him that way. She looked at the man beneath the crown. The hidden door opened slowly, revealing a small chamber filled with old records, royal symbols, and forgotten memories of the pack's past. Dust covered the shelves, but nothing about the room felt abandoned. It felt protected, like someone had been waiting for them to return. Ethan stepped inside first, but Ash moved ahead of him and walked directly toward an old wooden box. Lydia followed carefully. He knows this place, she said. Ethan nodded. That should be impossible. Inside the box was a collection of handwritten journals belonging to previous Alpha leaders. The oldest pages described a tradition that had been removed from official history. A tradition about the royal wolf line. Lydia carefully opened one of the journals. It says the Alpha does not truly lead alone. Ethan read the next line. His expression changed. The wolf chooses who can stand beside the crown. The room became silent. Lydia looked at Ash. Then she looked back at Ethan. That is why everyone was afraid of him. Ethan understood immediately. Ash was not just a royal pup. He was a living connection to a forgotten part of the pack's leadership. Whoever Ash trusted would influence the future of Blackthorn Pack. And that made Lydia dangerous in the eyes of people who wanted control. The next morning, Lord Victor Hale requested another council meeting. This time, his concern was no longer hidden behind polite words. The situation has changed, Victor said. The royal wolf has chosen an outsider. Ethan stood at the head of the table. She helped him when no one else could. Victor looked toward Lydia, where she found a way to make herself necessary. The words hurt more than Lydia expected, not because she believed them, because part of her had always wondered if she belonged in a place like this. She had spent her entire life caring for creatures that others ignored. She never expected to become the center of a royal conflict. Ethan noticed her silence. Enough, he said. The room went still. Lydia has earned her place here. But Lydia looked at him carefully. She heard the words. She appreciated them. Yet she also noticed the hesitation before he spoke. The fear behind his protection. Later that evening, she found Ethan alone in the sanctuary. Ash was asleep between them, peaceful for once. You do not trust me completely, Lydia said. Ethan looked surprised. That is not true. Then why do you keep trying to protect me from every decision instead of letting me make my own? Ethan had no answer. Because she was right. He had spent his entire life protecting the throne. Protecting the pack. Protecting everyone except himself. And now he was doing the same thing with her. I am not used to someone standing beside me, Ethan admitted quietly. Lydia's expression softened. Then maybe you should stop standing alone. For a moment, the bond between them felt stronger. Not something forced by destiny. Something chosen. But before Ethan could answer, a royal messenger arrived with unexpected news. The council had discovered a sealed record connected to Ash's bloodline. A record that could prove Ethan's claim to the throne was built on a hidden truth. And the person who revealed it was someone Ethan trusted most. The person who revealed the record was not a stranger. Ethan stared at the sealed document in his hand, his expression unreadable. It came from inside the royal archives. The words settled over the room like a heavy silence. Lydia stood beside him, watching the Alpha King carefully. She had seen Ethan face council arguments, political pressure, and rumors about her without showing fear. But this was different. This was personal. Ash moved closer to Ethan's side, sensing the change in the room. Who had access to the archives? Lydia asked. Ethan looked down at the seal. Only a few people. His voice became quieter. My closest advisors, the royal historians, and my former guardian. Lydia noticed the hesitation. Someone you trusted. Ethan did not answer immediately. He did not need to. The silence told her enough. The person who revealed the secret was someone who had been near him for years. Someone who knew his weaknesses. Someone who understood exactly where to hurt him without ever raising a hand. The council gathered again that afternoon. The atmosphere inside the chamber was colder than usual. Lord Victor Hale stood beside several elders, holding copies of the old record. The truth can no longer remain hidden, Victor announced. Ethan remained calm at the head of the table. Then speak. Victor opened the document. The previous alpha line was not erased. It was protected. The royal wolf carries a connection to a forgotten bloodline. His eyes moved toward Ash, then toward Lydia. And the wolf has chosen someone outside the royal structure. The room filled with quiet whispers. Lydia felt every gaze turn toward her. The same people who ignored her weeks ago were now watching her like she had become part of a dangerous mystery. This is not about me, Lydia said. Victor looked at her. That is exactly what worries us. Ethan stepped forward. Enough. His voice carried the authority of the Alpha King. You are turning a discovery into an accusation. Victor remained calm. Because leadership requires difficult choices. A king cannot allow personal attachments to influence the future of the pack. The words hit harder than Ethan expected. Because deep down, he feared the same thing. Not because Lydia was a weakness, but because she was the first person who made him question the rules he had followed his entire life. Later that evening, Lydia found Ethan alone in the sanctuary. Ash was sitting quietly between them, unusually still. You are angry with me, Ethan said. Lydia shook her head. No, I am disappointed. Ethan looked surprised. Few people ever spoke to him that honestly. Why? Because you keep trying to decide what happens to me before asking what I want. Ethan looked away. For years, he had protected the pack by making decisions alone. It was how he survived. But Lydia was not asking him to protect her. She was asking him to trust her. I do not want you to become a target because of me, he admitted. Lydia's expression softened. Ethan, I was already invisible before I came here. At least now I know what I am standing for. The word stayed with him. Then Ash suddenly lifted his head. The pup walked toward an old shelf and nudged a forgotten book onto the floor. Lydia picked it up and opened the cover. Inside was a message written by the previous alpha. Not a warning. Not a command. A promise. The strongest alpha is not the one who controls everything. It is the one who knows when to listen. Ethan read the words silently. Lydia looked at him. Maybe Ash did not choose me because I am special. She placed a hand gently on the book. Maybe he chose me because you needed someone who would remind you of this. For the first time in days, Ethan allowed himself to breathe. But the moment did not last. A royal guard entered the sanctuary with urgent news. The person who leaked the record had disappeared from the palace. And before leaving, they took one more secret with them. A hidden message that could reveal why Ash was protected for so many years. A message that could change everything Ethan believed about his own crown. The message was never meant to be found. Ethan stared at the old parchment in his hands, his expression becoming more serious with every word he read. The hidden note from the previous alpha was not a warning. It was a confession. For decades, the royal family had protected a truth that could change the future of Blackthorn Pack. Lydia stood beside him, watching the Alpha King struggle with something he had never shown anyone before. Doubt. What does it say? She asked quietly. Ethan looked at the parchment again. It says the royal wolf does not belong to the throne. Lydia frowned slightly. Then who does Ash belong to? Ethan looked toward the small wolf pup resting near the fireplace. The pack. The answer surprised her. The old alpha had written that the strongest leader was not the one who owned the most power, but the one trusted by those who followed him. Ash was never meant to be a symbol of control. He was meant to remind every alpha that leadership came from connection, not fear, not tradition, not a crown. For Ethan, the truth was difficult to accept. His entire life had been built around proving he was worthy of the throne. He trained harder, worked longer, trusted fewer people. Every choice had been made because he believed a king could never afford to be uncertain. But now the secret hidden beneath the palace was telling him the opposite. The one thing he had been missing was not strength. It was trust. You were carrying this alone for a long time, Lydia said. Ethan looked at her. That is what an alpha does. Lydia shook her head. No, that is what someone does when they think nobody else can help. Her words were gentle, but they reached him deeper than any criticism from the council ever had. Before Ethan could answer, Ash suddenly stood and moved toward the doorway. Both of them noticed immediately. The pup rarely reacted without a reason. Lydia followed him into the sanctuary gardens, where the morning fog covered the stone paths. Ash stopped near an old tree at the edge of the grounds. Beneath its roots was another hidden mark, almost invisible beneath the moss. Ethan knelt beside it and recognized the symbol. This was used by the first royal protectors. Lydia looked at him. The ones who guarded the old bloodline. Ethan nodded. Together, they uncovered a small collection of records hidden beneath the tree. This time, the secret was not about Ash. It was about the previous Alpha. The records revealed that years ago, someone inside the royal council attempted to remove the old traditions and replace them with complete council control. The Alpha was never supposed to rule alone, but someone wanted the pack to forget that. Lydia slowly closed the record. Victor knows about this, doesn't he? Ethan's silence answered her. The betrayal suddenly became clearer. Victor Hale was not afraid of Ash. He was afraid of what Ash represented. A return to a time when the Alpha and the pack were connected by trust instead of control. That evening, Ethan called Victor to the royal chamber. You knew the truth, Ethan said. Victor did not deny it. I knew what would happen if the old ways returned. Ethan stepped closer. You mean if the pack remembered that the crown serves them, not the other way around? Victor's expression hardened. You are too young to understand what leadership requires. Ethan looked toward the window overlooking Blackthorn territory. Maybe, but I understand what fear creates. After Victor left, Lydia found Ethan standing alone. You finally said what you believe, she said. Ethan looked at her. Because someone reminded me I was allowed to believe something. The bond between them felt stronger now. Not because fate demanded it, because trust was growing with every choice they made. But before the night ended, a royal announcement echoed through the palace. The council had called for a public judgment. They claimed Ethan had hidden information from the pack. They claimed Lydia had influenced the Alpha King. And they demanded that Ethan prove he was still worthy of the crown. The entire pack is waiting for your answer, Your Majesty. The royal messenger's words echoed through the palace hall, but Ethan Blackwood barely moved. The Alpha King stood before the council chamber doors, knowing that once he stepped inside, everything would change. Not just for him, for Lydia, for Ash, for the future of Blackthorn Pack. Behind him, Lydia quietly approached with Ash walking beside her. The small wolf pup looked calm, but Ethan knew better. Ash could feel the tension in the air. You do not have to come, Ethan said. Lydia looked at him with a small, knowing smile. You said something important before. The crown does not rule alone. Ethan looked away for a moment. That was before the whole pack was watching. Then maybe this is the moment they need to see it. Her answer was simple, but Ethan understood what she meant. For years, everyone had seen the Alpha King as someone who stood above everyone else. Today, they would see the person beneath the title. The council chamber was filled with members of Blackthorn Pack, leaders from different territories, royal advisors, long-standing families who had followed the throne for generations. Lord Victor Hale stood at the center, holding the old records Ethan had discovered. The Alpha King had information connected to the royal wolf, Victor announced. He allowed an unknown Omega to influence royal decisions. The pack deserves an explanation. Ethan walked forward. His expression was calm. You are correct about one thing. The pack deserves the truth. A quiet murmur moved through the room. Ethan continued. For years, we believed leadership meant carrying every burden alone. We believed an Alpha had to control everything to prove he was strong. He looked toward Ash. But we forgot that a pack is not built on control. It is built on trust. Victor stepped forward. Beautiful words. But words do not change tradition. Lydia watched him carefully. She understood what he was trying to do. Victor was not attacking Ethan's strength. He was attacking his heart. He wanted the pack to believe kindness made a leader weak. You think I changed because of her, Ethan said, looking at Lydia. But you are wrong. The room became silent. She did not make me weaker. She reminded me what strength was supposed to protect. For the first time, many members of the council looked uncertain. Because Ethan was not defending himself. He was defending a different way of leading. Victor remained composed. Then prove it. Show the pack why this Omega deserves a place beside the royal wolf. Lydia stepped forward before Ethan could answer. Everyone turned toward her. She could feel the weight of every judgment in the room. The same people who once ignored her were now waiting to see if she belonged. I do not deserve a place because Ash chose me, Lydia said. I deserve a place because I listened when everyone else decided they already knew the answer. A quiet silence followed. Then Ash walked forward. He stopped beside Lydia and looked toward the council. No fear, no anger, just certainty. The ancient bond between the royal wolf and the pack became clear to everyone watching. This was not about an Omega controlling the Alpha King. It was about the Alpha King finally listening to what his own pack had been trying to tell him. But before the council could respond, Victor revealed one final piece of evidence. A sealed letter from Ethan's late father. A letter that appeared to prove Ethan was never meant to inherit the throne in the first place. The room erupted with whispers. Ethan stared at the document, unable to hide his surprise. Lydia looked at him, realizing the final secret had finally arrived. And this time, the truth would not only challenge his leadership, it would challenge who he believed he was. That letter does not prove I am unworthy of the crown. Ethan's voice was calm, but everyone in the council chamber could hear the weight behind it. The sealed letter from his late father rested on the table between them, carrying a secret that had been hidden for years. Every member of Blackthorn Pack waited for Ethan to break. They expected anger. They expected denial. Instead, the Alpha King simply opened the letter and read every word. Lydia stood nearby with Ash beside her. She watched Ethan carefully, not as a ruler, but as the person who had spent his entire life carrying a responsibility nobody else could see. After a long silence, Ethan placed the letter down. My father did not write that I was unworthy. He looked toward the council. He wrote that I was never meant to rule alone. The room became quiet. Victor Hale's expression changed for the first time. The secret he planned to use against Ethan had revealed something completely different. The old Alpha had not chosen a successor based only on bloodline or strength. He had left behind a final lesson. A true leader did not stand above the pack. A true leader stood with them. The royal tradition was never about owning power, Ethan continued. It was about protecting the people who trusted us with it. The council members exchanged uncertain looks. For years, many of them had believed the strongest Alpha was the one who never questioned himself. But Ethan was standing there proving something different. A leader could admit what he did not know. A leader could change. Victor stepped forward one final time. And what about her? He asked, looking at Lydia. Are you saying an Omega from a sanctuary should influence the future of this pack? Lydia expected Ethan to answer. But this time, he did not speak first. He looked at her. He trusted her to stand for herself. Lydia stepped forward. I am not asking anyone to follow me because of my title, she said. I do not have one. Her voice remained steady. I am not asking anyone to respect me because Ash chose me. She looked at the small wolf beside her. I am asking you to remember that every member of this pack matters. The ones with crowns. The ones without them. The ones everyone notices. And the ones everyone forgets. The chamber remained silent. Because those words were not a challenge to the pack. They were a reminder. An Omega had not entered their world to take power. She had entered it to remind them what power was supposed to protect. Then Ash moved forward. The royal wolf pup walked toward the center of the chamber and sat beside Ethan and Lydia. The choice was simple. No grand display. No demand for attention. Just a quiet decision. The wolf trusted them both. And finally, the pack understood. The problem had never been that Lydia was too close to the Alpha King. The problem was that too many people had forgotten why an Alpha needed a pack in the first place. Victor Hale stepped back, his influence weakened by the very truth he tried to hide. He had wanted control, but the pack had chosen trust. Months later, Blackthorn Palace felt different. The council meetings were still difficult. Leadership was still heavy. An Alpha King still had impossible choices to make. But Ethan no longer carried them alone. Lydia became the keeper of the royal sanctuary, respected not because she stood beside the throne, but because she had earned her own place. Ash continued causing trouble throughout the palace, stealing blankets, interrupting meetings, and pretending to need attention whenever Lydia was too busy. Ethan once complained that the royal wolf had become impossible. Lydia only smiled. He learned from his Alpha. Ethan looked at her. That sounds like an insult. It is. And for once, The Alpha King laughed without worrying who was watching. Because the greatest change in Blackthorn Pack was not a new law, a new tradition, or a new ruler. It was the understanding that loyalty could not be demanded. Trust had to be earned. Power meant nothing without compassion. A crown meant nothing without responsibility. And sometimes, the person who changes a kingdom is not the one born to lead it. Sometimes, it is the person brave enough to sit beside what everyone else fears and simply choose kindness.